Hey guys, Akiba back again for a special episode of CryptoSlateIRL. Today with me, I have Gary and Ash from Virtua. How are you guys doing? How are you finding the conference?
Good. Very interesting.
Yeah?
Great.
So, you guys are from Virtua, which is, I want to call it a Metaverse project, but that seems to be not really doing it justice given the vast array of things involved with it. My first question I want to ask to you, Gary, you've been in the business for decades now. You've reached heights such as BAFTA nominations and the such. How have you seen the games industry evolve over that period of time? And do you see blockchain as being as revolutionary as, say, home consoles?
Great question. Starting with home computers, the basic home computers like Spectrum and Commodore 64, then evolving to the basic consoles, the 8-bit Nintendo Entertainment System, then the handhelds with the Game Boy.
Duck Hunter.
Duck Hunter, yes. And the rest, the Amigas, and then the PlayStations, and then mobile, which revolutionized video games in a way. And created a whole new sector because not that many of the traditional video games companies made the transition to mobile. So you had that breakaway. And now we see blockchain come along, the metaverse, and it's opening up a whole new way for people to consume interactive content, and games is obviously at the forefront of that. And I personally believe it is going to fundamentally change the way people play video games over the next few years. It's not going to be an overnight thing. I always say that. But it opens up so many new opportunities and possibilities for gaming, most of which we can't conceive of yet. But what we're finding, quite interestingly and frustratingly, is that the traditional video game developers, much like they didn't really embrace mobile, they're not terribly welcoming towards NFTs and the metaverse as well, and we're finding that a lot. So what we saw in the mobile game, and it is relevant now, is that a whole slew of a new generation of games developers came along who identified, we've got a touch screen now, it's a different interface, we've got to adapt gaming thinking to that. And now we're going to have the next generation who will look at Web3 and the metaverse in the same way and say, what can we bring into gaming that couldn't exist before? So, when I had the 8-bit computers, that was just flat screen pixel-based games. But then we got the PlayStation, which allowed us to do 3D games, and that revolutionized. I remember Tomb Raider was amazing because then
I was an N64 kid, so for me it was Super Mario 64 and GoldenEye.
That was the one, GoldenEye, another great example. And so, we saw all that, and then the touch screen, and that revolutionized. Blockchain is going to do the same, not necessarily in terms of interface, but in terms of the culture of gaming and how you interact with other people. Because obviously we've seen an enormous growth since the advent of the internet for multiplayer gaming, online gaming, and culminating in the phenomenon that's Fortnite and all the rest of it. Blockchain is going to further enhance those experiences and build communities in ways that we can't really conceive of.
So it's a really interesting point that you made, and it's something I've not really thought of before. I'm very passionate about the Web3 gaming space. I think that there's a lot that can be done. I've been gaming since my 6th birthday when I was bought a Mega Drive and came downstairs to find Sonic the Hedgehog on the TV. It took me about 30 minutes to figure out how to press start at that point because there was no kind of intuitive aspect to gaming at the time. Like, I just heard about these games. But the interesting thing that you mentioned is that there is definitely a divide between mobile gaming and like PC and console gaming. Like, my mum would not consider herself a gamer, but she games every night on her iPad. That is gaming. Are you saying you could see a future where Web3 gaming and gaming don't become synonymous, but more that blockchain gaming becomes like another element, just like we have mobile gaming, and that it has its own silo?
Yes, I think, you look at the PlayStation or PlayStation 5 or the Xbox One, they'll become the delivery systems and they will adapt to the blockchain games. Okay. As I say, it's not the delivery, it's not the content itself that necessarily is going to be affected by Web3. It's more the bits behind it, if you like, the interaction between people, the trading element of the sort of thing that NFTs bring, which hasn't existed before. Mm-hmm. We always use the example, when you buy a skin in something like Fortnite, you're not actually buying it, you're renting it. And one day, hopefully in the decades to come, when Fortnite gets taken offline, it becomes irrelevant, then all of those skins that have been bought disappear. With NFTs, you buy them, they're permanent. They will outlive the platform from which you bought them. And that's a big difference. So trading becomes a much greater element in games, and crafting and personalization.
You know what I find hilarious? I was arguing with Jason Schreier on Twitter the other day about this, trying to get him to at least come to terms with the idea that blockchain gaming might not be a scam. He wasn't having any of it. And I think one of the biggest criticisms people talk about with, say, digital collectibles and NFTs is, well, people say, oh, well, if the game goes down, you're still not going to be used it elsewhere. Well, one, maybe not. It could be integrated. But these are the same people that are arguing for physical games to still be a thing, for CDs to not go away. Like, yes, I might not have a CD player anymore, but I don't have my Mega Drive set up, but my copy of FIFA International is in a display case. Like, we have a similar thing is happening with NFTs. As you say, if Fortnite goes down, you won't have any of those memories, any of those things to look at, maybe screenshots and whatnot, you could argue. Yeah. But, I mean, I suppose, that's an interesting point. What would be the difference between, for you, for someone just screenshotting an item they've got in Fortnite versus holding it as an NFT once the game's gone?
Because there's a value. And as you say, someone who's grown up with, let's use Fortnite as an example, someone who's grown up with Fortnite and has this special place in their heart, maybe when they become 40 years old, they want to give it to their son or daughter or trade it with their friends just as a collectible. I mean, Ash always gives a great example of, when he went to his first WWE match with his son. He wants a commemoration of that, and he's got nothing to remind him of that. NFTs can bring that to life and personalize it so that it's specific to you. It doesn't have to have a value to anyone else. A picture of him with his son against a WWE background has no value to anyone other than him, but that's an enormous sentimental value.
Was it Clash at the Castle?
Yeah, I was there ringside.
Yeah, ringside. Me and my wife were a couple of tears up. But
I could shake Bret Hart's hand. It was great.
Really?
Yeah.
Interview over. Yeah. I can't like that. I'm too jealous.
Yeah,
we'll have to talk about that afterwards.
It was my fanboy moment. But kind of to add to what the point that you raised, actually, I think what Web3 does is Web3 gaming is the cultural shift as well, right? That my boys, my kids, they don't own anything. Right? We had CD collections, we had the game collections. They don't own their music, they don't own their movies. They don't have the physical games, like God of War, the new one came out, they're just downloading it now, right? The DLC expansion and all that sort of stuff. But, everyone talks about, Web3 and the opportunities for interop, which is great, but commercial realities are what they are, and people still are pretty siloed. It is happening, but what it does, it shifts the agency, that it's coming to me, I'm sovereign, I'm in charge. And when it comes to the NFT itself, well, the way in which and the opportunities the metaverse creates is if I own a game asset, that's fine. But now I can go into a virtual world and I can build a whole environment for that particular game asset. We can begin to bring communities together. Then we can have stuff like decentralized leaderboards and decentralized player profiles, that live on chain. And then I can create value in a different game.
I think that's a really interesting point. I was talking to Louis, the founder of Xborg, which is Swissborg's gaming arm, and they were talking very much about how esports on chain becomes a whole different beast in that you can find who's doing well. Also players can get paid instantly. Like there's a lot of problems, like 12-year-old, 13, 14-year-old kids playing esports, don't have a bank account, can't get the funds. There's been loads of stories of people winning big tournaments, struggling to get paid, especially depending on where they live in the world. With blockchain, you've got your wallet, tournament's over, you get paid. And there's so many benefits, but going back to what you were talking about in terms of your career and your progression, you had a similar thing happening at the dawn of the console, people saying this was never going to take off. The same thing with home computers, who's going to want that? It uses too much electricity.
It was always going to be a fad. Computer games...
Even you were saying that free-to-play, do you remember the same thing?
Yeah, free-to-play, no, can't work. Doesn't make sense.
So my question is going to be is, what did it take for those things to become part of the zeitgeist and get accepted, and how can we find parallels to that in blockchain?
Simple answer: content, captivating content. What happened when mobile games were introduced on the iPad, the iPhone and the touch screen, right? Traditional games developers just adapted traditional games to it and emulated a joystick on the screen. So you moved a virtual joystick. It was only when people like Rovio with Angry Birds and King with Candy Crush actually exploited the touch swipe, everything else, and created these games that engaged people. And that's what we need in the Web3 space. I mean, obviously, we're developing a big game at the moment, which we hope will capture people. But it's all about content. I mean, we spoke about PlayStation before. Tomb Raider sold the PlayStation. That maybe Gran Turismo, the original one I'm talking about. You've got to have killer content. That's what's going to bring people in. It's not about being clever or technical. It's finding something that truly engages and resonates with the users, with gamers, with everyone else. And everyone's searching for that, and I don't know, it could already be out there. Hopefully something we're doing will work, but who knows?
Well, let's touch a bit more onto Virtua through what you've just sort of said there. I mean, one of the things that King and Rovio solved is good UX. Like a little joystick in the corner of a screen isn't really that good a user experience. Web3 is notoriously still got a very poor user experience. How are you trying to leverage the learnings that you've got from your career and yourself in terms of strategy to improve the user experience with Virtua?
Well, as I say, it's not necessarily about the interface, because
we're
not talking about new hardware.
But the user experience as a whole.
It's gradually introducing... You've got two sectors. You've got the people who are already into Web3. Yeah. You, me, we're all into Web3. We understand it. We don't need convincing. We'll try stuff and we're the early adopters. It's not a problem, but that's a niche. What we want to do is engage with the mass market, and that needs your Candy Crush or your Tomb Raider equivalent. And I think the way of perhaps getting people on board is, obviously you've got to have a really great game or entertainment platform, and then you bring in the concept. You don't talk about NFTs. When we first sold NFTs on our site, we called them digital collectibles. We didn't call them NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, Reddit had great success doing that.
Yeah, recently. Exactly. So it's sort of by stealth, if you like, you're introducing new elements that are NFT based that actually make it expand the experience and make it more fun, and then all of a sudden they'll go, my God, I've just realized I've bought an NFT, or I'm using an NFT. You don't shove it down people's throats. It needs to be natural, it needs to be organic, it needs to be intuitive, and then they'll say, okay, I can't play a game without that. And we go back to the free to play. People go, how can free to play work? Well, it did, and it worked amazingly, and those companies made billions of dollars. But a lot of people didn't pay for the games, but those who did pay, paid a lot. and continued. And I think, you know, you've got to understand your market, and I keep saying this all the time, it's going to be an evolutionary process. There's going to be a lot of trial and error. You've got to see what works, what doesn't. We had an early start. We've been doing this now for 5 years. This has been in development for 5 years. We've been trying different things. So, and with our experience in various other sectors, we feel we've got a little bit of a grasp. No one knows anything. It was quite interesting on the conference today, someone said, oh, we've got experts on this. No one's an expert. Mm-hmm. It's too new. We're all learning.
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's experimentation, and we'll figure it out. But the beauty of this, and it started with the mobile games and now has become with Web3 even more accessible, is user feedback, community. You're engaging with the users themselves. So rather than trying to figure out and saying, why are people not playing past level 5, for instance, now you can actually speak to them and they'll tell you, well, that was too difficult or that was too, and you get this communication going, which we've never had before. So you can actually tailor the experience much, much better, because every game designer is designing the game for themselves rather than for what they believe, or they're designing it for what they think people want rather than finding out what people actually want.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought I dropped the mic.
No, it's absolutely fine. I think it's an interesting point that you mentioned just a minute or two ago there in terms of the technology, because I think that's something, and the sort of the lexicon that we use in terms of Web3, because I find that's something that is definitely needs progression. In terms of gaming, yeah, we used to talk about 8-bit, 64-bit, 32-bit, but that was it. People just needed to know what that meant, and you knew that 16's more than 8, therefore it's better.
It's powerful,
with blockchain, we've got smart contracts, we've got wallets, we've got all these other angles. Actually, in terms of, because you're in charge of strategy of Virtua, from a strategic point of view, how are you finding, do you feel that, best way to put it, that in blockchain we're kind of gatekeeping a bit too much by focusing on the technology, and we need to focus more on just the deliverable, the outcome of the outcome, as I call it?
Absolutely. I think that we have a tendency to talk about the plumbing too much. Yeah. That's what I say. You know, and the example I always love to give, I don't know how that one swipe buy thing works on Amazon. Well, I'm glad it does. You know, and generally speaking, people don't care how things work; they care that they do. You know, and and that's generally our philosophy. So we try really hard to create really easy entry points into Virtua, wherever that might look like. So, you know, with mobile, we're talking about, you know, using a QR code to come in a very casual basis. And we have different tracks that we have. We have the super casual people, you know, we have that Web2 audience, and then we have the gamers, and they all have different tracks. Mm-hmm. And they all need different kind of entry points into the space, right? So there might be someone that's you know, watching the Witcher, right? And they're watching it on Netflix, and they're one of the first people that are watching it in the first 10 minutes. When the episode drops, they want to watch it. That's a super fan. The brand should give them an entry point to this space to be able to engage in a new way. There might be a mum at a store who's got a crying kid who wants a Barbie, but she can't afford to buy a Barbie, but maybe there's some way in which that she can get a digital version that can bring her into this world, and she can have her own space in the metaverse. And then we have, you know, the gamers that want to have a new place to interact, new social spaces, and, you know, those people have their own entry point. So we're trying to create multiple entry points, knowing with the learnings that we have from a gaming perspective, from a consumer's perspective, and working with the brand's perspective, understanding what they want, and give people value in this new space. And we always say that, look, it's not about the real world and the digital world. The real world is the physical and the virtual. It comes together. That is real now. Like my boys, when they want to meet their friends, they put on headsets. They're not jumping on bikes. You know, if I took away my daughter's Snapchat, TikTok, Insta, she doesn't. You've taken a massive amount of their social existence, her existence away. So that digital presence, that digital interaction, that digital social is their new normal. So we have to cater to that, I think. So these are all the new sort of paradigms, new challenges that we're thinking about, and giving people easy ways to onboard. We can't just be in our silo and say, look, Web3 is going to change everything, and you just got to deal with the way we do things.
But people find Web3 the jargon confusing.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is why we didn't use, when we first launched NFTs, when we first launched our NFT marketplace, we deliberately shied away from using NFT, not because it was a bad word, because it wasn't back then. It was new, but people would say, "What's an NFT?" And you say, "Non-fungible token."
What's fungible?
What does that mean? So we just stayed away from it. People get confused with jargon, so we stay away from blockchain, NFT, Web3, even Metaverse is becoming a bad word. We just want people to embrace this new technology, and it should become, again, when I say in stealth form, that sounds a bit sinister, but you know what I mean. It needs to evolve naturally and be embraced.
And I think what's really fascinating, I think it's great that you're looking at different tracks for onboarding, because I think you're right. One, from a point of view of being kind of open and transparent enough to know that you can't get it right now. There's no one's an expert. There are different audiences we need to cater to. But I think one of the things that like legacy gaming industry, like developers are really missing out on is it doesn't stop there. There's different tracks for one of the most difficult things for like gaming as a service is balance. How do you balance it for the casual gamer and the Twitch streamer? Because you need both. That the Twitch streamer will get the players in, they're going to play all day, every day, so it needs to be engaging for them. The casual player, some of them will be able to play as much, some will play 1 or 2 hours a week. How do you balance that? With NFTs, you can have drops for, when it's like drops for competitive skill-based elements, I think that adds a whole layer to balance. Is that something that you guys are experiencing in developing Virtua as well?
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to. It is balance. Everyone has different desires, different. What are the? I've gone blank. But everyone likes something different, and you have to cater to the casual gamer and the core gamer alike. And the content has to reflect that. Now, maybe it's down to producing or developing different games to cater to those different tastes. But a good game truly should be able to bridge the two. And that's the holy grail, if you like, and that's what we're working towards. So
I think, as I said earlier, I think calling Virtua just a metaverse is kind of doing it a disservice. You've got integrated wallets, you've got an NFT marketplace. It's a very broad scope in what you're doing. What goes into building a project of that vast scale?
A lot of sweat. Yeah.
Money. It evolves. I mean, we came up with the concept 5 years ago, over 5 years ago now. And we've been building it ever since. Before everyone was talking about Metaverse, this, that, and the other. We were building it, but we weren't thinking Metaverse. It was just this
We did show
thing.
Ready Player One at the launch, though.
We showed Ready Player One at the launch of in 2018, yes. But it wasn't even necessarily called the Metaverse then. I think that was coined in Snow Crash. But I've forgotten the question.
What goes into it?
What goes into a project that size?
Again, I'll use that word evolve. I mean, we've tried stuff that hasn't worked. We've tried stuff that has worked. A lot of it is trial and error. And I think you run into a danger, potentially, of trying to do too much. And so we sort of went NFTs and then broadened it out. And we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And we've brought it back now. And we're talking about a gamified metaverse. That's what we're doing. We're focusing on the gamification side, the gaming side. And we know that there will be elements for education, for wellness, for all sorts of things, for art, for comic books. There's so many different facets that will sit very, very comfortably in what we've created. But what we need to do is focus on where our expertise lies, and that's potentially the gaming side of it, and then allow others who are better at other things to come in and participate and build within those environments.
But the thing is, like games that don't do that, projects that, it's not even just gaming in general, just tech and development, people will do things you didn't expect with your project and with your tech and break it and do something different. And if you don't get on board with that, you end up like Armour and you don't have PUBG anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, PUBG was built in the Armour sandbox and became one of the biggest games in the world.
Well, to this point, I mean, you know, even when we finished the first land sale on Cardano some months ago, and you know, there were some really surprising results. Like, we saw these communities that were emerging that we didn't expect, because what we did in Virtua was, for us, the big question was the why. Why does anyone want to own land in the metaverse? Why? Why has Roblox got 34 million? Why has any Web3 metaverse got 10K max? Right? Why is that? So for us, it was solving that, which was, you know, when you own land in Virtua or a condo, wherever it might be, it emits resource that you can craft into new exciting things, you know, and we're talking to many games that you can use the resource from Virtua to craft items within their games. Oh, so, you know, capturing scale effect, but at the same time, there's a reason, and there's lots of other things that you can be able to do. But one of the things we did when we rolled out Cardano is we had very specific windows that you were allowed to buy land in. And if you did it at that time, you got like a special bonus. So at one point we did these jets that you got if you bought a small plot of land or something, right? And then all of a sudden we've got the Rogue Squadron of Virtua has appeared. And, you know, on our Discord there's like 200 of them, like 195, and they call themselves 195 Squadron. A new community emerged. Then we saw the Hounds, which are like, and then we saw who have the cars, because we gave some cars away. Then we had some condos, which are not, it's not land, but you can own these little apartments. And we did little yachts with them, and the yacht club emerged. So, you know, but we got on board with it, and then we try to empower it in that way. And then the other communities that are out there, and there's so many, you know, and creators are having that moment. But what happened with a lot of these NFT projects was they promised a game, they promised a metaverse, both things of, you know, as a gamer and as people building metaverse, they're really hard things to do, but every NFT project out there promised it. Then the market went the way they did, and now they've got this community that are looking for utility, but they can't deliver it. They don't have the expertise, the treasury or whatever to do it. So we said, well, come to us, and let's empower your communities as well. And, you know, you can exist within Virtua or give your own customized space and add utility to your community. And that's kind of what we're trying to do, is being super responsive and see how this thing evolves, because it is going to evolve. Like Gary said, there's going to be an element of evolution, but we've got these really amazing communities that are just popping up. Everything that we do, they're getting behind it, saying, okay, we're this, we're that, and we're the other. So
that really touches on something else that I wanted to ask, which is, like, what is the metaverse? Is it something where, and it sounds like that you're going to say no to this, is it something where there will be a main metaverse project, as kind of Facebook seemed to be hoping for, or are you open to a view of a more open metaverse, where metaverse basically means metaverse projects interacting, sharing assets, communicating?
Got to be collaboration. It's got to be collaborative for it to work. You know, the whole concept of, you take a company that makes a very well-known mobile phone, that they're sort of a ring-fence company. It's got to be open. I mean, the metaverse, when we talk about Virtua Prime, we say we're building this world and it's got these features, etc., etc., and you automatically conjure up this world. What it actually is a tool. It's a tool for you to create your own self-expression, to craft things, to build your own world that you want, an extension of your own personality. And so it's something entirely different. So the metaverse can mean many, many things, but it's not just a universe. There's so much more to it than that. Philosophically, there's so much more to it than that.
And also, like, you know, there's you unlock all these other possibilities, right? Which is, okay, if I've got this NFT, how it's represented in Virtua, because the model data is not on chain. There's not a chain to do that quite yet. But you know, you can have different companies working together to represent that same NFT in different ways. So we're high fidelity, but someone like Sandbox or Minecraft, you know, they've gone pixel route, and then you're going to have low poly. But that same asset can be represented in different ways in different places. We're able to do that sort of stuff, you know, that the chain does allow us to do it. But, sorry.
So I was going to say, do you think that is a need? Do we need better NFT standards so that we can have things like the assets actually on, the model data on chain, so that they can be?
Yeah, I think the technology does need to evolve. I think right now at this point, everyone is just focusing on getting product out. Yeah. And I think it's about getting product out there. And then, talk to, like, you know, we all begin to work together at a point. And I think I think generally we're a lot more open in Web3 to that. You know, we're a lot more collaborative, and generally everyone kind of knows.
Cardano is a good example.
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that,
everyone, yeah, you know, so everyone kind of knows everyone. Everyone's very supportive, so that's exciting. And I think standards will definitely help. I think model standards will help. You know, that if you want to use it within this type of stuff, or if it's Unity based, it'll be like this. If you're on Unreal, it should be like this. If we have those agreed standards, it will make life easier. So I think we will get there, but I just think we're a bit early for that just yet, because no one's really got their product out.
You don't know what would need to be in the standard.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see that.
And also you got IP issues as well, because if it's a brand, then they're very, very protective. They don't want Batman doing anything outrageous. They want to keep control of that model and what it can do. So there are all sorts of complexities in that regard. But yes, I think we have to work together, particularly now when we are looking to break this whole metaverse concept out into the mainstream. And it's not going to be down to one company. It has to be a collaboration. We've got to work together and play nicely together. The market's big enough, the potential market's big enough for us to do it. Some people are a little close-minded about it, but as Ash said, we are very, very receptive.
So, in terms of Virtua itself, as I kind of alluded to, there's a very broad spectrum of what's involved with it. And as a result, it can be quite daunting trying to get into a new project and find out everything that's happening. You're talking about all these communities that have been developing over time. What would you say would be the best way for someone to learn about the project, but also get up to speed on where it's at?
Well, I think, you can go to islands.virtua.com and learn a lot about what's happening in terms of Virtua Prime and what it's going to be. We've created a ton of content, so across all the YouTube channels we have like a weekly meet the team, so you can see what's happening with the project, weekly dev updates, so you can see what's happening in terms of development and the high level vision of it as well. So.
And Discord, we've got an amazing community, very receptive, very friendly. You can talk, ask questions. That's a great tool for us.
Okay, so then my last question is very hypothetical. No one's going to hold you to this, but I'd like to ask you both individually, and I'm going to start with you, Ash. Paint me a picture.
Put your headphones on. You can put your noise-cancelling headphones on.
Paint me a picture of what gaming's like in 2030.
What gaming is like in 2030? It is a tough question, and part of it is, I think, it's hardware driven, So if we see the advances that we're hoping for in terms of mixed reality, I think there's a massive growth in that area. I think mixed reality, where that's AR with the interesting stuff that's happening with waveguides and holographics and stuff, that's very exciting to us. And VR, as headsets evolve, I think a layer over our reality is going to be very, very exciting. And I think in 2030 may be a bit early, but I think the future does lie there. And I also believe that, with Metaverse, I think that is going to become second nature. That it's assumed that these games exist in a massive digital landscape. I think that will become like second nature. People will assume that, and people will assume that gaming assets should be portable and they're mine to begin with. So and decentralized identities, I think it's going to be huge. I think those things.
I think it's going to create new social structures. The communities will spring up based around games, based around common interests, either in the metaverse or predominantly or initially via games, and you will have your own group community of friends. There's guilds already that will come about, which doesn't really happen at the moment. When you go into Fortnite or whatever it is, you're talking to your own mates, really. You may have a few
the whole
new
World
people.
of Warcraft guild thing it's kind of died down a bit.
It has, and this this way you're going to have a global access where you're commonly shared interests, and it may not just be, I love this game and this particular movie and this album, music artist and everything else, and you can actually find people with exactly the same interests, and you have tons to talk about, and you sit there in a virtual room in your virtual world with your virtual friends, and you have so much to talk about because you've got so much in common. That doesn't happen at the moment, and I can see Web3 actually enabling that. One of the things, and I mentioned this before, I've been following, is there is a company, I've forgotten what they're called, who've developed a contact lens that superimposes, that creates AR, if you like, superimposes. No, it's not Magic Leap. It's an actual contact lens.
Oh, wow.
So the thing that's restricted VR, I think, apart from the being not great content, is the cumbersomeness of the headset, the intrusion. Once you create the ideal form factor, which should be in the form of a contact lens or something unintrusive, then you open up a whole new area for gaming particularly, but for all sorts of Web3 engagement and Metaverse engagement. And if that technology, 8 years sounds reasonable if you're talking about 2030, I think that could just create a whole new thing for games particularly. It's exciting, but I've learned when you're dealing with tech, it's so difficult to look even 3 years in the future, let alone 8. But with what's being developed, with what we're developing, with what we know, and with what we aspire to, those 8 years are going to create some enormous changes in entertainment, education, economy, commerce, everything really.
One other bit I'll add, right, is AI. I think
Yeah.
I think that we could get to a stage in 8 to 10 years that you don't know if the character you're interacting with is a real person or a digital intelligence. And that's really exciting to us as well. Avatar on steroids, basically. We're taking baby steps with that, even in Virtua. Like, if you're on a land plot, depending on the rarity, you get these NPC slots. You create the NPCs as NFTs. You build their personality. You build their character. You own them, but it's just like it populates the world. But these are characters that you can own and you can create and craft and build their own social, whatever. But I can see in 8 years, 9 years, worlds can exist where you're playing against an AI and you don't even know you're interacting. You can't differentiate. It's going to be really exciting.
You've already seen demos of people using what's
Deepfake.
Or chatbots and all that sort of stuff.
No, I was going to say it's DaVinci's the text version of OpenAI.
Oh yeah, GPT-3 and all that.
Yeah,
the text,
the image. I forget the name of it right now.
The deepfake stuff.
No,
there's another one.
It's the image generation tool.
I can't remember what it's called.
The AI image.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where you can literally, I've got it on my phone. You can say, "Do me a picture of whatever."
Yeah.
Doing that in VR is incredible. Being able to say, right, I want that wall to be Elon Musk on a rocket, and they'll just generate that for you. And then maybe you turn that into an NFT as well. Being able to create you become a magician in the metaverse. And I've seen some demos of stuff like that, and it's incredible.
It is.
And I think you're right. I think AI will be a big part of it for not just the interactivity, but also for the content generation side of things,
definitely.
and storylines and as such as well. Having that so adaptive storylines and things.
Giving people that canvas to do it, and not being like making a wall garden or being super territorial about it as a platform, rather than saying, look, we'll give you, here's our base IP, our VFlex or our characters or our thing, and go nuts, and then not being, and understanding that self-expression is really important to this next generation coming up. They're not going to be held, you can't hold a new generation coming up to the same standards that, we perhaps conform to. They want to express themselves in new authentic ways, and brands have to adjust to it, we have to adjust to it, and they've, the messaging can be very subversive, the way in which they want to communicate that brand, but it works, so we can't have those same standards. We've got to be open to all these sort of new creations.
Yep, love it, completely on board. Okay, well, Gary, Ash, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Everyone watching, if you're watching on YouTube or any of the other social channels, on the CryptoSlate website, there's a full article write-up of this video. In there, you'll find links to the website and the Discord and all the such. So for this episode of CryptoSlateIRL, I'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.